everyone, and welcome to It's Always Sunny in Phoenix, a weekly podcast where we keep you up to date on everything Phoenix Suns basketball. All right, this week we're going to talk about the Suns versus Clippers game that we just finished watching, and then we're going to talk about the big trade rumor going down in Phoenix right now. I'm Charlie, and I'm joined by David and Mitch. What's up, guys?
What's up, guys?
Whoa,
David has intro music now. I like it.
I wanted to change it up.
I like it.
it's quite the way to make an entrance. I like it.
Okay, well, here's mine. Bwah! Hi, guys.
That sounded like the Inception theme, so.
Bwah! Oh no, where's my totem? I don't know if this is real life.
Is it just fantasy?
All right, that's a great start to the show.
But speaking of fantasy, have you ever fantasized about wearing a t-shirt that says the cheese is warming up in a nice orange logo? I know I have, and I decided to make my fantasy a reality. You can go to tpublic.com/user/sunnyandphx. That's TEE public.com/user/sunnyandphx to buy a t-shirt or laptop cover or phone case or whatever that says the cheese is warming up or Sunny in Phoenix podcast. A lot of good stuff. So check that site out. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. Get your loved one a new phone case. Everyone loves phone cases. So get on that.
And for us to further fulfill your fantasies, make sure to get a hold of us on social media. Hit us up on Twitter at SunnyInPHXPod. Check out the Facebook under the name Phoenix Suns, multiple sources. Our email is sunnyinphxpod@gmail.com. And of course, check out the website at sunnyinphxpod.com. Okay, let's start off, talk about this Clippers game. The Suns were able to hang around all game in this one after a pretty sluggish start, but ended up really falling apart late in the game, dropping this one, final score of 124-114. The Clippers were without Chris Paul in this one, and even without DeAndre Jordan after he committed a hard flagrant 2 on Marquise Chris early on in that third quarter. And then with the absence of Jordan, the Suns were able to get into the lane and fight themselves back into this game, making it pretty interesting. So let's get started with it. My two big takeaways from this one were Eric Bledsoe's 41 points, which made his third 40-point game of this season. And then Devin Booker continuing that streak of scoring 20 points in each game. And that's all the way up to 14 games in a row now. So what did you guys take away from this one?
I have one thing to say about this game. And there's one play that I think gives a great summary of our culture change that we've undergone. And that's a play where Eric Bledsoe had a breakaway. No one in his way, everyone staying back, just letting him score 2 points, no problem. Except Devin Booker decided to come with him. And Bledsoe handed the ball off to Booker at about the free throw line. And Booker took a dribble and dunked it home. That's just complete selflessness by Bledsoe. It was really cool to see that teamwork. You know, it was completely unnecessary, but in a good way. And that just shows, I think that really shows how much these guys care about each other. And it shows that family emphasis that Earl Watson has had this whole season on the court. So I was really happy about that, despite the result of the game.
Yeah, my takeaway from this game is that I thought we finally eliminated the PJ Tucker post-up, but apparently there's still a little bit of that left in the playbook. So, Earl, get on that.
Yeah, that's maybe one of the least enjoyable plays of basketball that the Suns run, closely followed to, or maybe before, the Brandon Knight long step back two.
What would you rather see? The Mirza post-up / dribble move in the post or PJ Tucker post up?
Mirza, baby, because that means we still got the
Yeah.
Bosnian bomber from the 3-point line.
Okay. Fair enough.
I don't know. Maybe ask me that last season when Mirza was on the team, but it seems like I kind of miss Mirza now. But back to this game. Just, Mitch, what you said about that handoff to Booker, I looked at that. I was thinking Bledsoe already had over 20 points at that point. He's been working on his assists lately. I just saw that. Like, those were two positives that came with that. Might as well pad those stats a little bit. But, I mean, if it's all for the right reason, it was a safe play and everything, I love to see that. So, good things coming out of them. And then Bledsoe. I mean, man, get this guy going with a full head of steam, especially when they don't have DeAndre Jordan patrolling the paint. And he was just getting to the rim, picking up fouls. He has been amazing lately, and I hope it's not being overshadowed by this streak that Booker's on, because that's all well and good. The 20-year-old kid scoring 20 points per game over these last 14 games, but man, I just got to give it up to Bledsoe.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's been great.
Okay, so let's just moving on to the real reason why we're here recording this episode tonight. And we want a Boogie. Well, some of us might want a Boogie a little bit. We're going to get into it. I'm sure you've all heard, but John Gambadoro of Arizona Sports recently reported that the Suns were in trade talks with the Sacramento Kings, trying to bring in DeMarcus Cousins to Phoenix. Gambo reported that the initial trade talks involved TJ Warren, Alex Len, and our 2017 first-round pick to the Kings in exchange for Cousins. And it was also noted that as part of this deal, Devin Booker and Eric Bledsoe were off the table on this one, so they were not going to be part of this in any way. And we've seen a little bit more talk about it today, saying that the Suns would probably have to add another guy like Bender in order to make this happen. So, what are your guys' initial thoughts on this? How are you feeling about the possibility of bringing Boogie to Phoenix?
I'm really split on this, because as the seasons have gone on, I've started to slowly, I guess ponder is the right word, because I get into the patented Sunny and PHX robe, my Sunny and PHX slippers, and I just think, I'm like, is Boogie a good stats bad team guy? And then I watch him do stupid stuff on the basketball court and then think, oh yeah, no, he's really good, and everything around him is just a dumpster fire. But then, like, at the same point, it's like, I'm so conflicted. I'm just really conflicted and not sure which way to go. I can talk myself into it or out of it, like, every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think I would say I'm about 60-40 against the trade, and here's why. One, I don't want to give up TJ Warren. He still has so much potential to be great, and when he's healthy, he can do a lot of good things, and I want to see him continue to grow. I think he can be a big piece of this team. I also don't want to give up Bender or Chris, because I think those guys have a ton of potential. And I don't want to give up a 2017 first-round pick, because this draft has a lot of talented players, and it's looking like we're going to get a pretty high pick, so that could turn into something really good. But, I mean, it's DeMarcus Cousins. He's an amazing player. He is really, really good. And it's clear that he wants to play with Bledsoe or John Wall. He's mentioned that. And I think they would work well together. But the other reservation I have is that for the first time in a long time, I feel like we have really good locker room chemistry. And I'm not sure what it would be like having Boogie in our locker room. I think Earl is the kind of coach who really could handle him, but at the same time, we don't really know. And I just think we have a good thing going, and as long as we continue to be patient, it'll pay off. The other thing I think is what's going to happen when, or I guess not when, but if we don't make the playoffs after we get Boogie next year. If we don't make the playoffs, he's not going to be very happy. What if he doesn't want to re-sign? The Kings have mentioned that they would pay him $200 million. Would we have the cap space to pay him that much and re-sign Booker and Bledsoe and potentially Chris or whoever? I just don't know if it's worth it.
I mean, the argument with the cap space thing is that bird rights are still a thing.
That's right.
And I think that basically every team under the new cap has like some sort of supermax kind of thing.
That's right.
Which I think is the case. I could be completely wrong on that, but I feel like that like supermax kind of thing is a deal. So I mean, like at that point, like you can look at it from that angle, but I don't know. It's just like I think the good points are that we like giving up T.J. Warren and one of Bender or Chris is a big deal.
Yep.
I know originally didn't say that, and I think that everyone's a little lukewarm on Alex Len right now. But my argument also against the first round pick is that the top like 4 prospects are all point guards, aren't they?
Yeah, this year there's a lot of point guards in the top 10 picks.
So like if we're like the second pick or the third pick, would drafting a point guard when we have Bledsoe and at least, you know, if Knight's traded, then we don't have Knight and then we only have Ulyss, but if Knight isn't traded, then we still have Knight and Ulyss. Do we need another point guard on the roster? I think that's kind of what you can question. Some of us will say yes, some of us will say no. I think that's something to look at when it comes to that first pick, that maybe we see ourselves as not really needing a point guard, and that if we can pull the trigger on a big man like Cousins, then giving up the first is necessary and totally worth it, I guess.
So I think I'm a little more in favor of this move than you guys are, just because I initially think of having a legitimate big 3 here in Phoenix with Boogie, Bledsoe, and Booker. They're all scoring over 20 points per game this season. So if you think about it, just add their 3 averages up, that's probably pretty close to 70 points per game right there. And it seems like that's coming from every facet of the game possible. You have Bledsoe driving to the rim. He can also shoot it. We got Booker. We've seen him do it all on offense this season. And then we have Boogie, a guy that we could throw the ball to in the post or even the high post and let him work it. I would just love that. But my big hang up on it is, what does the rest of the team look like? I don't know if this is a big 3 that can support a playoff basketball team with a bunch of spare parts in on the bench and the other 2 starting spots. I'm not sure how that would work. I think it might spread us a little too thin, especially if we have to trade one of our rookies from this season. I just don't know how I'm feeling about it. But so say this does happen, we have to add some pieces, more than TJ Warren and Alex Len and our first rounder. Or say we can switch out that first rounder and add in a different player or a different pick. What would you be comfortable with giving up to get Boogie here? I know we're all going to say absolutely no Bledsoe, absolutely no Booker. But are there any other untouchables on our roster right now?
I think Chris has made a solid case for him almost being an untouchable player. Which might sound kind of interesting, kind of ridiculous, and I know I am definitely on the Bender bandwagon. But, I mean, Chris has played really well and continues to get better and more comfortable with the NBA speed. And even though, he had the 20-point game against Memphis and then kind of had a stinker against the Clippers, he was still hustling out there. He was still not backing down. He was going for the dunks. He was going with the athleticism and showing it off. And I think he's made a case as someone with that athleticism that I think we look at him, or we will look at him as someone that we just don't want to part with, because the idea of Chris in a year taking an extra step and filling out a little bit more, even though he has already filled out pretty well, filling out a little bit more and getting more comfortable in basketball as someone that can complement Bledsoe and Booker really well.
Right. I'm right with you there. I'd even go as far as saying we'd have to keep one of the rookie power forwards from this draft, and I'd obviously have it rather be Chris. And, after we kind of stole Chris away from the Kings, I don't want to let him go back there. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm ready to pull the trigger on anybody but Bledsoe, Booker, and Chris, I'd say. I think that'd make 4 out of the 5 starting spots really solid on this team for the next upcoming years. We just have to find a new small forward, and that's one of the things that's concerning me.
Right. Well, and I also think I would like to add Bender to the list of untouchables. I know he hasn't done that much this season, but we've seen how versatile he can be and how good of a perimeter defender he is. And I just think he could develop into something great if we give him the time. I don't know if that's going to be possible, if we're actually going to do this, but I really don't want to see him go. Same with TJ, but I mean, if we're going to make a big trade like this, TJ is going to have to be involved, I feel like.
Right. One quick note about Bender from this game against the Clippers. So at one point, this was in the second quarter, the Clippers had Blake and DeAndre on the bench. And then we put out a lineup of Bender, PJ, TJ, Barbosa, and Knight. So we had PJ guarding Spates. And Bender was guarding Austin Rivers. And Austin Rivers was guarding Bender. We didn't really take advantage of it much, and maybe Bender's not at that point in his game yet to be able to really take a smaller guy down at the block, but the idea of that and the future of it, that gets me excited. We can go small ball with the 7-footer out there. I've been hyped about that since we drafted him, and now we get to see it implemented, and it's beautiful. I love it. So it would be tough to give up Bender too. You're very right.
Right.
I do want to be contrarian a little bit. As much as I'm on the Bender hype train, and this is almost a rhetorical question, but not at the same time, what will Bender be able to do, like his max, do you think, that he would be able to do? Like in a game?
See, I think if I told you the stats that I think he could average per game, it wouldn't be as impressive as what he actually brings to the team.
See, I'm not talking about necessarily the stats. I am talking about like the team, like the style of game and that kind of stuff.
That's tough to just put a name on to compare him to somebody. But if we want to go old school and go with the guy that he compares himself to, a Tony Kukoc type guy, maybe Tony Kukoc ceiling. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna like the skills that we look at. We look at the perimeter defense. We look at the rim protection. We look at the outside shot. a possible post game, maybe pick and roll as the ball handler, being able to pick up some assists, and being a 7-footer out there, being able to play outside in or inside out. I think all of those things, and like all those are really best case scenario. I think. I mean, he's not going to be to where he becomes like Kevin Durant and then like blows that out of the water. That's just not going to happen. With all the things that like he could have really good skills at, I think Boogie already has those skills. So the argument would be, yeah, Bender might become that kind of player, but Boogie already is and is a bona fide star in the league. You know?
Yeah, and that's a good point. My thinking is that I hate to see teams that tank for so long and try to do so much to rebuild and then give up on it to get a star who doesn't end up re-signing after a year.
Right. And we've heard that McDonough, he's like sniping for a superstar that gets angry enough with his team to be able to make a deal for him. Like, we've heard him say that. That's what he's looking for. That's how he thinks we're going to get a big name here. If it's not in the draft, our superstar, we're going to have to get some guy that's a little angry with his team's management that wants a trade. So,
right.
I'm not excited about that happening either, because if he's angry there, why wouldn't he be angry here if something were to go wrong? And
right.
like we said earlier, the camaraderie in that locker room we have going on right now, it's a great thing. We're losing games, but you can tell these guys are playing hard for each other and that they like each other. So
yeah, but I mean, you bring up a good point. McDonough cares about the business side. Basketball is a business. This is all a business. He wants a big name to come so he can fill the seats more. You know, it's a money thing, and that's what his concern is. That's why he wants this superstar. It's not at all about the result of the season. If we lose every single game, but still make a greater profit with a superstar on the team, that's success in the eyes of a lot of GMs.
And especially the owner who's paying the GM.
Okay, yeah, right.
I think if he said maybe Sarver, that's all he cares about, yeah, I would agree with you. I think that everything that McDonough has done with the assets and everything has been under that train of thought of having so many assets that you just throw them at someone with a superstar and get your superstar that way. That is historically, like, not necessarily historically, but right now almost what you have to do. It's, from a money standpoint, you're almost never going to see a huge superstar go somewhere else just because of the fact that you can make so much more money staying with your team. So instead of that, you would want to trade them and then be able to give them all that money because you have their bird rights and you have that ability. I think this is, as I just said, I think McDonough's game plan the entire time has been to get enough assets and use those to get your superstar. If you hit in the draft, that's always a bonus. But I think this is where you go. You can only have so many assets. You're not going to hit on all your assets, and being able to get a sure thing is what you want to do. If you're a GM, your goal is to get those assets and then flip them. An asset is only as good as you can not as I meant like not an asset, but like a draft pick. A draft pick is only so good as the person that's picking with that pick. Because there are busts. There are so many variables when it comes to draft picks. And you're limited also with that draft pick by the talent available. You look at this past draft where, you know, it has a lot of players that were going to be looked at as role players, but you look at maybe only Ben Simmons or Ingram as two guys that possibly have that superstar potential. And a lot of people didn't even think Ingram did. They just figured that because of the shooting in college and the frame that he could be a superstar if he really worked at it. And really a lot of people only thought Ben Simmons was that shot of the superstar. If you look at that and say, okay, is the third pick in in this past year's draft more important or more valuable than the pick in the draft in the previous year? Where at the 3 spot you could have picked Porzingis, you could have picked Jaleel. Moutier was there, who was looked at as a really good guy, and I know Moutier didn't really pan out, and Jaleel isn't panning out, but you look at Porzingis, who was the 4th pick, who has shown the flashes. You look at guys who were picked later, Miles Turner, Devin Booker. I mean, like, these are guys that were picked with the later picks and showed superstar flashes and continue to show superstar flashes. Whereas, you know, so far we see maybe all-star flashes or maybe solid role, like solid starter flashes from some players in this past draft class. And I think that's where you kind of have to look at it. You can't put all your eggs on one draft pick and that pick turning out. It's not going to happen. I know that that's kind of the hinky way, is just expecting you to eventually hit with one of those draft picks. But I think that most GMs that get the million draft picks get those for the chance of having a James Harden who is on a team with 2 other guys and thinks that he can break out and isn't getting the money that he wants, and so asks for a trade, and so you just throw the farm at him.
Yeah, those are all good points, and it actually brings up something that I want to say just to play devil's advocate. Know that I don't actually think this, and that it might make some people mad, but when you talked about assets, if we think of Eric Bledsoe as an asset, his trade value has never been higher. It's insanely high right now. What could we get if we threw him in it? I know we said that he's untouchable, which I think he should be, but just for the sake of conversation, what could we get for if we put him on the table?
And that's exactly it. The asset part of that. But I think that Bledsoe would be one of those guys that you throw all the assets at to get to him. But if you are trying to use your assets to get players, you're looking for guys that are like fringe all-stars that have the possibility of making that next step. And I know the devil's advocate is, well, you know, Bledsoe is the highest he's ever been. He's hurt every other year. And, you know, all that is going to eventually wane on his knees, since it's always a knee injury, it feels like. But at the same time, I think that the McDonough side of it is that, well, he was playing and he was arguably an all-star this year. What if he's healthy next year? Then he could for sure be an all-star and be a late bloomer at the point guard, be a Kyle Lowry, you know?
Yeah.
And I think from that aspect is where right now I think McDonough is looking for the superstar to complement the 2 starters on the team. I think that's what any GM would be, is not necessarily trying to continue the rebuild. I mean, like, not, but to move and get the draft picks for the rebuild, but instead to look for that next star piece more of.
Right. So let's get back to this a little bit more. Say we do bring Boogie in. Are we a playoff team right now if we bring Boogie in? And then after that, going forward, a couple years down the line, what do the Suns look like if they do bring in Boogie? Once his contract comes up, his comes up, when is it? 2018, right? So we'd have him for one more season after this one before he came up. And then Bledsoe for one more year after that. So we have Bledsoe on this nice manageable contract right now. bringing Boogie in on his is no big deal, and re-signing him to a max is still doable, but once we get down there, Booker's going to be needing that fresh contract. Bledsoe will need a extension if we decide to keep him after that. So what do you guys think? Say this does happen. What does the future look like?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And this season, I don't think we're a playoff team, whether we get Boogie or not. I think it's just too late for that. But next season, I would say it depends what happens in the draft and what we end up having to give up. I think it's hard to say. You look at teams like the Mavs. The Mavs probably won't be as bad next year. The bottom teams in the West are pretty bad this year, and it's hard to see them being quite as bad next year, I think, because you've got teams like Denver who are on an uptick, kind of like us. It's really hard to say.
You could make the argument that we could make the playoffs this year. We are 8 spots out of the 8th seed currently. Not a whole lot. There's a whole lot of middling in the West right now, mainly because of a lot of the top tier talent kind of focusing around 3 teams, I'm going to say. Those 3 teams, the Warriors, Spurs, and Rockets. You could say Clippers, but I don't think that's as much. I think Clippers are the next ring down, where it's Clippers, Jazz, and Grizzlies. The top talent is kind of gravitating towards those 3 teams in the West. So the bottom end of the West is pretty even right now when it comes to. I mean, like the Suns have only 15 wins, and we're at the bottom of the league or bottom of the Western Conference. But 15 wins would have been, I think it would have been the second worst, but like just barely. I think the Lakers were the second worst team last year with 17 wins, and the first one was the Sixers with 10. So we're not necessarily a bottom tier team. We're kind of just all like in the middling of the bottom of the West, and not middling per se, but kind of just we're all kind of clumped together right now. The Trailblazers are 22 and 28. They are that team that is there at the 8th. The Nuggets are 21 and 27. Those are kind of I think what a lot of people think are going to be the ones that are vying for that 8th seed. If you add Boogie into the mix, I mean, how many wins does that add to the Suns? I think you have to argue. And if we could make up that ground by having a more consistent defensive and offensive presence, I don't think it's necessarily out of the realm of possibility to say that we could be a 8th seed this season, lose to the Warriors, but then come in and try to get to like that 5th or 6th seed next season.
Right. And this season, if we were to make this trade and send off Warren and Len, right now, this year, that wouldn't hurt us much. We could have PJ start at the 3 again. We could move Dudley in to play backup 3. With Len being gone, that puts Cousins to the starting center and Chandler to the bench, so we're not missing anything there. That's obviously a plus. So, I mean, unless the Trailblazers or Nuggets really got hot and we brought in Cousins, I could see us getting that 8th seed. Do I want to see us get the 8th seed and get stomped by the Warriors? Not so much, but it'd be fun, I guess.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing I was going to say. I just don't know if it's even beneficial for us to get the 8th seed this year. Like, yeah, it'd be cool to make the playoffs. It's been a while. But for the sake of the draft and getting stomped by the Warriors in 4 games, I just don't know if it would even be worth it at this point.
Another argument that I've kind of seen is the possibility that if this is a trade that both sides are kind of agreeing with, it would be that they wait until the off season to make the trade, and that way the Kings could guarantee that they're getting either like Fultz or Ball,
Right.
like back in the trade, and like I think that's kind of understandable, and would make sense a lot. And I there's just so much going on. There's, I think, been only like 3 or 4 reports going on. King saying that they're not trading DeMarcus, which is kind of how I'm more leaning towards, anyways. That it's not as much as if I want DeMarcus or not. It's that I think that the Kings just aren't going to trade him, and that he doesn't want to be traded.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing that I think we need to bring up is that there's been reports saying that these talks, haven't had these talks since before Christmas, and it's February now. I mean, that doesn't mean it can't happen, but I think a lot of people are in the mindset that, oh yeah, the Suns and Kings talked about this yesterday. No, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
And also, like, a talk could be McDonough calling up Vivek and saying, hey, we want DeMarcus Cousins, and Vivek being, no, we're not trading him.
Right. That's absolutely true as well.
All right. So, just one last thing I want to talk about, just to humor myself. Going forward, if this all goes down, what are the Suns going to look like? I'm most worried about just big glaring holes in the roster once, say, we sign Bledsoe to an extension or add a couple more years on. We bring back Boogie after his contract's up. We sign Booker to a long contract. I mean, is there any money left after that? Who would we have on the roster by then? Ulyss, Bender, and Chris, aside from those 3 guys? It would be quite the scenery change if this were to happen.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, to play devil's advocate, we would still... Or not devil's advocate, I don't know why I said that. I don't think our depth will be affected. We have enough guys that are on deals right now that are cheaper. You could bring back a guy like Big Sauce. You can... If All-Star Weekend goes down and Derek Jones has a crazy dunk contest showing, we could just sign him to a long-term deal to begin with. I think we already have him for a 2-year or something like that. But we could technically extend him over the summer. If Bender is gone, or if we still have him, those guys are good for 4 more years, I think, or 3 more years after this one. I think it's 4. I think it's 5-year deal. And Ulyss is on a same length deal as those guys, so you at least have them. Dudley would be in for 2 more years, and who knows if he would want to keep on playing or if he just want to retire. I feel like if we were in a contending spot, he would probably be okay with staying on a team-friendly deal. I feel like if we're in a winning spot, that Tucker re-signs no problem, and we probably have the ability to keep Tucker if we want, no matter what. And having restricted free agency for Booker just means that we match whatever contract we give him, and because of how the salary cap works, that isn't an issue. So I don't think the depth is affected that much. And bringing in guys on minimum deals is always a possibility, and if you're a winning team, is more than a possibility. It's what guys kind of want anyways.
Yeah, maybe we'll just bring Ronnie Price back for like 6 more years.
5.
Yeah, just keep him coming. As long as he stays in shape, why not? All right, any other final points about Cousins, or should we wrap this thing up?
Does Mitch have a closing thought?
Well, my closing thought is I want to update people on the poll that David posted. He was humble that he didn't mention it, but I'm just checking it. David created a great poll on the wonderful group Phoenix Suns fans, Suns Nation in parentheses, saying, what should the Suns do if we get Cousins? And right now, the leading option with 6 votes is make Big Sauce head coach and move Earl to starting center.
Ooh.
The next most popular, 4 votes, trade Beldso for potato chips and put Cousins in the gorilla suit. We have a couple new options here that are pretty interesting. Clone 5 Larry Birds and have them all start. Or make Harambe as a head coach. We also...
yeah.
I'll go through all the options just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
Cold nacho cheese and ugly cheerleaders starting at shooting guard and small forward, which I think is a great option. Trade Bledsoe and start Cousins at point guard. That actually might be the most reasonable of all of these.
Yeah.
And then trade Bledsoe and bring Cousins off the bench. So there you go.
I mean, if you're interested in getting in on some of the discussion like this, the group's called Phoenix Suns Fans, and then in parentheses, Suns Nation. It's a closed group.
Yeah. Tell them we
know some people to get in, so
maybe
if you request a membership there, maybe throw in our name, the Sunny and Phoenix podcast, and maybe they'll let you in. Like, we'll put in some good words. We'll say the people that listen are good people. You gotta let them in.
That might also hurt you, though.
Well,
that was too much. That was too much.
Sorry about that. Make a note of that.
I'm editing it anyways. It's no big deal.
All right. Okay, with that, let's wrap it up. That's going to do it. Be sure to check us out on social media. Twitter handle @Sunny and PHXPod. Facebook, Phoenix Suns, multiple sources. Our email is sunnyandphxpod@gmail.com. Our website is sunnyandphxpod.com. And we'll see you next week. Go Suns.